Hello everyone, this is Julia. Thank you so much for joining me on my craft room adventures. Today I have a double slider surprise holiday card to share with you, and this is actually a 3-in-1 challenge card. First, it's for the Get Cracking on Christmas, my entry for this month. Then it's also for the current Lawnfawnatics challenge, Fun with Food, and it's also a challenge between me and Lien for our Challenge a Crafty Friend. And we actually came up with a series that we're calling Family Mice. We're both totally in love with the Lawn Fawn mice, and we want to create lots of little scenes with those critters. So the stamp sets I'm using are Sprinkled with Joy, and I'm using the big oven, the baking sheet, and also some of the other elements. I used Baked with Love, and I'm using the piping bag and the spoon from this one, and also the butter and the little bowl. Then I'm using some mice from Dandy Day, the little mama with a baby and also the one that's blowing. Then I'm using the stool and the 2 mice from Merry Mice, the 2 sitting mice from Crazy Antics, and from Bah Humbug, I'm using the light string and also the Santa hat. I'm using the plate of cookies from Ho Ho Holidays. And I'm also using the plate of cookies from Christmas Dreams. And I also used the little cat. I pointed to the little stocking, but I didn't end up using that one. So first I started by stamping out my images. I did that off camera, but I wanted to show the stamping of the oven. I started by stamping out the cookie sheet. Then I used just an acrylic block to add my gingerbread men. Then I lined up the oven because I wanted it to be inside. And then I just stamped that on top so that it looks like the cookie sheet is inside the oven, ready to get baking. I'm just using my sleeve to get even pressure on my stamping tool. And here I'm using a Copic multiliner just to draw in 2 lines so that it looks like a 3D effect inside of the oven. I stamped all of my images onto Neenah Solo White cardstock, and I'm using my Copic markers to color them in. First, I'm starting out with Cool Grays. My darkest shade is the C5, and I'm just adding the shading wherever I want the image to be darkest. I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to shade it, so I went a bit back and forth. Then I'm going in with C3, blending that out, or blending the C5 out, just pulling out the color a little bit further. Then going back in with another layer of the C5, just deepening up some of the areas where I want it to be really dark. Just like the edges of the oven front, and also the part where I don't even know what that's called, where the little knobs are meets where the cooking top is. Sorry, I have no idea what those words are. Now I'm blending that out with C3 and then finally C1 as my lightest shade. Then I'm also using the same colors for the baking sheet that's inside the oven. Just going in with my darkest shade, the C5, blending that out with C3, and then also with C1. And I wanted the center to be even lighter, so I'm bringing in C0 for the center of the cookie sheet. Then I colored the inside of my oven. I went in with E50 markers. At first I thought I would keep it pretty light, but there really wasn't enough of a contrast to be like basically in the shadow. So I went way darker than I thought I would. I used E57, then E55, E53, and E50. And I ended up really liking this combination. I decided to go with the E50 markers because the other brown shades on my card will also be E50, so it all matches nicely on the card. Then I also added some of the E50 as a reflection on the cookie sheet, because the warm tone inside the oven would make the metal look warmer. And I also added some Y000 to the center and also some Y00, just to have like the little lamp that's in the oven, the like yellowish warm tone reflecting on the cookie sheet. To color in the other elements, I wanted the oven to stay gray, but I didn't want to use only the same shades of gray, so I decided to go in with the toner grays. I'm using T7, T5, T3, and T0 just to color all of the tiny little elements that are on this oven, the cooking, what are those called? The circles on the cooktop, let's go with that. And also the frames around the front, the little feet, and also the spaces between the buttons. And like I've done in my previous videos, for time purposes, I'm always going to show one image coloring of this color combination. And I will just color the rest off camera because the video is already really long and I don't want to make it even longer just by showing basically repetitive coloring. I use the same shades all over the card, so if you want me to leave those in, just let me know. I'm happy to do that. I just don't want to have super long videos. So for my gingerbread man, I'm also using the E50 markers, E57, E55, and E53. And the buttons I'm coloring in just with a dot of the E57. For my green combination on this card, I'm using YG67, YG23, and YG03. And I will also be adding in some YG01 just to blend it out. I really love this green. It's not like a dark green, but this yellow, green, and the red, I just really love how they look together. For my red combination, I'm using R89 as my darkest shade, R27, R24, and R14. And I was surprised how well these blended. I like to use my E30s, and the two lightest shades don't blend that well, but this one was really nice to blend. Just pulling in the R27, blending out the R89, sorry. Then going in with the R24, pulling the color in a little bit further, and then blending everything together with the R14. For my little kitty, I'm using toner grays again, the T2 and T0. I wanted him to be mostly white, grayish, so I didn't add a lot of shading there. And I just thought it would be fun to add the little cat because the cat is asleep while the mice are playing. I just thought that was really cute. I'm just using the colorless blender to blend out the edges. For my yellow, I wanted it to be a gold shade because when you buy butter here, the packaging is usually gold. So I'm using YR23, Y15, Y11, and Y00. For my mice, I'm using my favorites as usual, the E50s. E55 as my darkest shade, blending that out with E53, then E51 and E50. I already colored all of the mice, but I thought I would show you the mama holding the baby because that's the only one I colored any different, because I only used the E51 and the E50 on the little one, because I wanted to make sure that's quite a bit lighter than the others. Just blending all the colors together, also using just a few swipes of the E50 on the tummy of the mice, just to give it a little bit of color. Then I'm using, like usual, my makeup blush, to add some flush color to the cheeks and the ears of my little mice and also on the cat. Just using a Q-tip. And I wanted to create, as you saw in the beginning of the video, a kitchen scene. So I just cut down strips and little rectangles out of white cardstock. I just swiped the T0 across the sides just for a tiny bit of shading, and I die cut the doorknob from the Build a House die set from Lawn Fawn 8 times to create the doorknobs, or the pulls for my drawers and cabinet doors. Just using my quick stick tool to add those on with liquid glue. For those cabinet doors, I'm just basically pushing them up against each other so that I can line up where the doorknobs would be. In the finished card, there's basically, except for one door, there's images in front, so I kind of could have skipped this step, but you know, I know it's there and I know it's lined up, so it's all good. Just placing a dab of glue. The gray cardstock I'm using for all of the gray die cuts is Storm Cloud by Lawn Fawn. And since it's a double-sided surprise card, you can't really add any dimension, and I wanted the door to be basically look like a 3D effect. So I just swiped the C9 across all of the edges to give it more of a dimensional look. And here you can see that it basically looks like there's a shadow created by the door, even though there isn't. I die cut all of the double slider surprise pieces, 2 of the side pieces, 2 of the main parts that I cut the notches out of, and the track piece. Then I also cut the main piece out of the Gotta Have Gingham paper and also from white, and I just cut that down. Then I did the same thing for the side panels, because the Gotta Have Gingham paper will be my kitchen wallpaper or backsplash, and the white will be the backing for the cabinetry. And I also die cut 3 strips out of the Storm Cloud cardstock, and I also die cut the notches out of those, and I die cut them with the side panels so that they would have the nice stitching edge. And there I have the cabinet doors. Now it's time to start assembling my double slider surprise. First I went ahead and adhered the gingham paper and also the white so that I could assemble the mechanism, because that would be harder to do later. Now I'm just adding 1/8" score tape to both sides, top and bottom, front and back of the track piece. I'm just using some regular score tape. And I cut down just a plain freezer bag, cut it down into a strip that would fit around the track piece. And I'm using the wider, I think it's 1/4 inch score tape, just on one side. I'm removing the backing paper, and I'm just carefully lining up the sides, and I'm just dropping it onto the adhesive, making sure it's not too loose, not too tight. And then I'm just trimming off the excess, making sure that the piece moves. There you can see the adhesive. I'm just moving it a little bit further from the edge, and I'm putting a second layer of score tape just on top of that. and also on the opposite side at the same place on the other side. So that when you turn them, you have them one on the right, one on the left, and this is how the panels will slide. Now I'm using the grid on my glass mat to line up the panels. I removed the backing paper, I'm lining both pieces up so that they're straight, and I'm just dropping the side panel front facing up into the adhesive. Now I'm doing the same thing on the other side, lining it up with a grid, but this time you want to make sure that the back of the slider piece is facing you, because that will be the back of the slider. Just again, lining it up, placing it into the adhesive, and that's basically the mechanism done. Now I'm folding my pocket pieces along the square lines that the die created. And I'm just using my bone folder to reinforce the square lines. All of the white cardstock I'm using, by the way, is Bristol smooth cardstock. And I'm using the 1/8" score tape again on both flaps. Just removing the backing paper, lining both pieces up, basically just butting them up against each other, and pressing down the adhesive to create the pocket. Now I'm removing the backing paper of the track piece, of the back of the track piece, and I'm just lining that up with the bottom fold of the pocket, just pressing everything down. Then it's time to remove the other backing paper and just closing the fold of the pocket. Then I'm removing the last pieces of backing paper. I'm making sure, I'm being very careful to place the panels in the center so that I don't accidentally glue them shut. And then I just need to close the lid to create the double slider surprise. Now I'm using liquid glue to adhere the Gotta Have gingham paper in the gray color. And also the white piece that will be the backing for my oven. And I decided to use, usually those pieces I would use a tape runner to adhere, but since the pocket has a bit of a curve, I thought liquid adhesive would be better. And now I'm also adding the little, what is that called? I don't know. The piece that goes up behind the kitchen counter that separates the wall from the counter. Someone can please let me know. Thank you. And I also added those to the side panels as well. I made sure to add that last so that I would have a continuous countertop once you open the card. Now I'm just using some liquid glue to adhere my cabinet doors and also the drawers. And here you can really see the effect of the black pen around the rim of the images, because usually you would use something like foam tape to create dimension, but this is really a nice effect to add. If you wanted a bit more subtle, you could use a lighter marker. I just went for the C9, but you could totally use like a C3 to get a little bit of a shadow. Then it's time to add my oven, also using liquid glue. I made sure to line it up in the center, and also the cooktop with the counter so that it looks like it's basically in there. I wanted to add a string of lights to the oven, and I just cut that down, glued it together so that it would fit. And then I'm just using 2 dots of glue on each end and just placed it down. Also adding the little milk and cookies, because my mice are gearing up for Santa to come. adding the little gingerbread man, and I love that this one is the one that's actually from Dandy Day blowing on the dandelion. I just think it's the cookie's still hot. He's just blowing on it because he can't wait that long. He needs to eat the gingerbread man. Adding the sleeping kitty. And also the little mama mouse with the baby that's looking at the cookies that are just baking. Here we have the little stool and the mice that's holding the spoon. I wanted to make sure that the card would close, so I didn't want to add too many layers. So I just looked where the placement of the spoon would go, drew a line with a pencil and just cut it down with some scissors so that it would look like the spoon is inside the bowl. Just erase the rest of the pencil marks and use the Copic multiliner just along the white edge that I just cut. Now I'm just using liquid glue to adhere those down. And for all of the side pieces, I'm just using liquid glue to adhere everything, also adding the butter. The two sitting mice on each side that will get a little gingerbread man. The little tub of vanilla frosting. The shaker with glitter sprinkles, and also the second mouse. Then I'm adding the piping bag and the gingerbread man that the mouse is currently decorating. And then I'm also adding the mouse, and at this point I actually didn't realize that it's a magic mouse because he's floating. So I will be fixing that in a moment. Just giving one of them a little Santa hat and adding the rest of my gingerbread man that I colored just all over the scene. Then I cut down a piece of chili pepper cardstock to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Then I used the outside-in stitched rectangles and the what's it called? The quilted backdrop to out of Bristol smooth cardstock, just to have a nice red edge around my card. Then I used the second largest stitched rectangle to create a backing for my double slider piece, also out of Storm Cloud cardstock, just to create a few layers. And then I added foam tape to the back, and I'm adding liquid glue to the back of the foam tape because I wanted the dimension, but I wanted the flexibility of being able to move it in case it wasn't straight. Then I die cut one of the fancy wavy banners from Lawn Fawn out of chili pepper cardstock, and I'm going to emboss Happy Holidays from the wavy holiday sentiments from Lawn Fawn. I just stamped it down with Versamark ink, and I'm using Wow opaque bright white embossing powder in super fine. And here I'm just using a brush to remove any of the stray embossing powder. Off to the side, my heat gun is already heating up so that it's nice and hot when I take it to the paper. And now I'm just going over the embossing powder until everything is smooth and melted. I added 2 layers of foam tape to the back of the banner, and I'm just placing that in the center of my card on top. Then it was time to add finishing touches and embellishments. I used the Nouveau shimmer pen in aqua shimmer pen and glitter gloss, and I just added that to the cookies, the butter, the Christmas lights, also all of the gingerbread man. And at this point I realized that I didn't color in the buttons of the gingerbread man, so I just went in with my marker again. And then I'm adding Stardust stickles to the Christmas lights, also the white parts on the Christmas hat, and also the glitter sprinkles that I didn't color in, I just used the stickles on there. And I'm also adding a little bit to the tip of the piping bag and the inside of my bowl. Then I'm adding a few white gel pen highlights. This is really new for me, but I do like how it looks. Usually I don't do it because I'm terrified I'm gonna mess up my card at this stage. But I decided to just go ahead and add a few, and I really like how it turned out. And that finishes off my card for today. I really like how it turned out. I'm so in the mood to start Christmas crafting, and I'm really sorry that I missed a few of the Get Cracking on Christmas, but I'm back at it, and I'm also behind the scenes already prepping my holiday card series for this year because I do want to make it really special. Let me know what you think of the little family of mice. I just adore them. They are so cute, and I can just imagine them having fun baking gingerbread cookies. And that's where I also added one of the little stools. I just cut off the bottom part and added it so that my magic mouse wouldn't be floating. And that finishes off my card for today. I really like how it turned out. I hope you do as well. Behind the scenes, I'm actually already prepping for my holiday card series for this year, so if there's anything you would like to see, please leave it in a comment down below. I would love to include it. I will also link to Lien's video down below, so please go check it out. I'm sure it's amazing. Thank you so very much for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye!